So this is a very quick walkthrough of our poster presentation for icet on blogs, portfolios and student teachers looking at blended learning and ICT education. What I'm going to do is start by talking a little about our students, who they are, what their skills are, what their learning styles are, talk a little about how we structured our course, give you some background to our first experiences with blogging back in 2009-2010, some of the key thinkers, some of the big ideas relating to our work, talk about the design decisions which we made, and then give you some screenshots from the Blogfolio system that we developed for this year and show how it's been used, give you some of the statistics, but also give you a few examples of the students' work that's gone on in there, share with you a little of the feedback from our students about how it's gone, and then tell you about our agenda for the future, where we're heading next with that. And I've got to get all this done inside the 15 minutes that YouTube allows me to upload. Here we go then. So when we look at learning styles for ICT education, I think there are three really that we think of, and we have students which fall into all three of these categories. We have a significant number, probably the majority now, not quite the majority, who are very happy learning through play, learning through exploration, provide a piece of software, provide a context, and they love just figuring out how to do something for themselves. Very close to Prinsky's digital natives, I suppose. We have a number of students who actually quite like having handouts, quite like having walkthroughs, who like to have that bit of support. We also have a number of students who are very happy talking to us, listening to us, learning through conversation with one another. We ask them these questions when they join the course. We also ask them how good they are on 17, 18 different aspects of ICT, and a number, of course, score very, very highly, getting 53 out of the maximum 54 points on this audit. A number score relatively low on this. So we have a whole range of ICT capability when they join us, and that has implications for course design. Interestingly, when you compare those two statistics, what you find is that those who seem happiest to explore actually score more highly on the audit than those who prefer to have that bit of extra support, and that also has those implications for course design. So what about course design? What we did was structure each session in two. So there's a first part of the session which students are able to do independently if they wish. We give them the software, or we provide links to the software, we provide a task for them to do, we also provide some readings of course, and they do all of that independently. And then the idea was post all of the evidence from that onto your blog, onto their blog. They come in for the second half of the lecture. The other students are allowed to come in for the first part of the lecture where they work with us, and we'll provide that one-to-one support. They can support one another, they're face-to-face, and so those students who prefer that bit of hands-on support, that extra contact, are able to have more support for that part of the lecture. And again, they stay for the second part of the lecture where we do group work, plenary discussions, much as we would in any other context. Evidence of this, of course, all went on to Blogger back in the 2009-2010 academic year. This was seen as a radical, relatively radical approach for us. A lot of students regarded that very positively. 50% of them saw that as a very positive thing. 25% somewhat more negatively, it should be said, and highlighted a number of problems. From our perspective, the course was completed satisfactory. There was evidence of increased reflection. There was, however, not as much of the peer support that we'd been hoping a blogging platform would provide because of difficulties with Blogger itself and other technical difficulties such as emails bouncing back saying blogs had been suspended. Stepping back a little, it's worth saying that Roehampton takes very much a social constructivist stance, and we see the meaning as something which is developed through conversation, through discussion, through learning alongside other people, and of course the blog platform being able to read what one another have thought about things we see as providing an excellent opportunity for that. We are also of course very influenced in ICT education by the work of Seymour Papert and this notion of constructionism, that we learn best not merely through discovery and experiment, not merely through conversation, but we learn best through creating things for other people to see. We also see this process of professional formation of teachers in the sense of the community of practice, that initial teacher education does this sort of thing, and this sort of thing very, very well. We want to address the other aspects, the other components of Wenger's social theory of learning, that there is also this sense of emerging identity in this process of taking on the identity of a teacher or becoming a teacher, as well as this sense of participating in the community of practice, of legitimate present participation. So looking back on our 2009-2010 experiences, as we were revising the course for this year, we had a number of priorities. We wanted to keep as much of the control locally ourselves to avoid those technical difficulties which Blogger presented, and we wanted to establish right from the get-go a mechanism that students could comment on one another's posts. A number of particular functional requirements. We wanted to be able to tag posts, ideally against a QTS skills taxonomy. We wanted there to be a mechanism for students and for tutors commenting on students' posts. We also wanted students to be able to upload a whole range of digital artifacts, the work which they created for others to see, and we wanted to have a very close sense of identity to the teaching group, the sort of 25 to 30 people with whom the students most closely identify. A number of things would also have been jolly nice if we could do those. I just spotted the typo there. This led us to conclude that Drupal was the solution for us. Drupal is an open source content management system used for a whole range of things, from websites to blogging sites such as we've used. It's a very flexible tool, which has particularly good support for tagging, which has particularly good support for reporting, which has particularly good support for the creation of groups within that. We looked at a number of other solutions too, but Drupal seemed to be the one for us. So we went ahead and registered the name Blogfolio, as this was both blog and portfolio, and this is the screenshot when I went and logged in recently. So the sort of thing which I get when I log in is what's been posted recently in all of the groups of which I'm a member. If I click on the new post link up at the top here, I get a form which looks a little like this, which is familiar to anybody who's used almost any other website. Notice the WYSIWYG editor, which allows the upload and embedding of images, of video, of links to other resources and to other websites, and in a format which students will be familiar with from most WYSIWYG word processors. And our tagging against what we consider for ICT education and the most relevant QTS standards. When a student logs in, they get to see something which looks a little like this, which is the blog posts from their home page. So here are the most recent posts in one of our PGCE groups, and of course students can add comments on that and read more of what one another are posting. And I think we did see that by students sharing their writing with one another, that was raising the bar, and students were raising their expectations, or that raised students' expectations of what was appropriate to put in there. Here's an example of one student's blog, so lots and lots of embedded media here, and there's plenty more to read if one clicks on the read more link about reflections on that. So, over the course of the year, 615 registered users, some posting lots and lots of content, some only posting very, very small amounts. A number of these, of course, are students who interrupted, deferred or withdrew very early on in the course. We had 7,289 posts over the course of the year, and interestingly, of course, they coincide with when we're doing group activity. The peaks here are when we're doing group activities in lectures. Gaps during the holidays, which was not entirely expected, as it was very much course-related space, although some groups used it for other purposes too, interestingly. Sorry. Right. Okay. There are just over 1 million words recorded in the posts which they've made, and it's interesting that the word which comes up more than any other here, according to the Wordle tag cloud, is the word children, and I think that's wonderful for an initial teacher education blogging platform. Look at these other words as well: learning, think. The key words, they really are. We had not as many comments as we'd have hoped, I think, 3,548 comments in total, with over 100 students not commenting at all on one another's work. Some commenting very, very large amounts. This is me here, commenting 290 times on things. But this is a student. This is one of our first year IT specialists. This is a student too. So sort of fairly classic long tail distribution when one looks at that comments. Because it's something where we've got control of the database, we can do all kinds of clever things like data mining. So this is the social graph of one of our PG groups. Look at the difference here between node 107, who's a real sink for comments. Lots and lots of people commenting on posts made by student number 107. And let's pick a contrasting one, student 102 up here, who's a real source for comments. And indeed student 96, both of whom comment on lots of other students' posts. So that's, I think, something which I'd like to explore much more. We have them posted. I was going to show you now some examples of the work which students have done using this space. So here's an example of students posting pictures, posting images as part of our art and ICT lecture. We have students recording videos of themselves on practice as they're reading to children and reflecting on that. Again, that's linked to teaching and learning module this year. We have lots and lots of reflections and conversations going on inside the blog space, some of which are very interesting. We have emerging senses of identity. So one here which is very much focused on personal identity. The one on the left here, something which is, I think, situated identity, thinking about how this student would use podcasting in a school context, and another here which is stepping back somewhat and thinking about education in general, and of course the Ken Robinson video on Do Schools Kill Creativity? Module evaluations, or the evaluation of Blogfolio, was positive, not as positive as we'd have hoped. More who thought that it had made a positive difference to their learning than in the previous year with Blogger, but still a significant number who didn't find it a particularly helpful experience. I think because of the sort of directed task assessed focus. Some really positive comments from students in that evaluation space there, as you see, some which were somewhat more critical. Although it's interesting here that the comment is that Blogfolio we could have made much more of Blogfolio, and I think that is a lesson for us to take on. But this is lovely, and sort of thinking ahead to this student's future, that she'd like to, or he'd like to, keep using Blogfolio into the future. So what are our plans for the future? Well, in terms of technology, there's this issue with email notifications. It's set up at the moment to send one out every time a student posts to the students in their group, which has promoted that sense of dialogue, but also means that there's this whole huge numbers of emails coming in during session-based tasks, so we're changing that. We want to expand the number of file types, because at the moment Drupal has a sort of list of approved file types, so I want to do some work over the summer on that. I want to explore the possibility of giving students the ability to set their own theme to their blog. We like the Facebook notion of liking things, and we want some mechanism for students to be able to share work beyond their own group. So if they or we think a post is particularly interesting, it would be lovely to share that cohort-wide or site-wide. We'd like to provide easier access on mobile devices with a sort of iPhone-based theme. We're thinking about linking it to the university's password system, and we also, for assessment purposes, want to bring in some sort of activity tagging so that it's easier for us to see which directed tasks have been done and which haven't. In pedagogic terms, we want to do more to encourage dialogue, to deal with the fact that some students don't comment, some posts don't receive many comments. I wonder how much of what we have here is about evidence and moving more to one of reflecting rather than just sharing. We've approached this in quite a formal sense, but it would be nice to provide more space for that sort of informal learning and expanding its use to something across the whole of our programme beyond ICT education, and something which might actually have applications beyond the life of the course or beyond the work of the education department, or even indeed beyond Roehampton. So that's basically what we've done. Let me put the title back. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm m.berry@roehampton.ac.uk, and my colleague John Lodge with a very similar email address. Thank you very much for watching the video.